Alright, so this month's Roman report is kind of personal for me, because I can't think of many things in the recent history of the automotive industry that have made me angrier than the escalating brightness of headlights. And I know, some people are going to say it's not even the automakers doing this. Sometimes it's just people adding aftermarket LEDs or using their high beams and leaving them on by mistake. And maybe that's the case for some situations, but I don't actually buy that that's where all of this is coming from, because it genuinely seems like more and more new cars on the road are equipped with lights that are, for lack of a better term, irresponsibly bright. Not only blinding to oncoming traffic, but to vehicles directly in front of these headlights. And not everybody's dimmer switch can overcome an SUV trying to do an impression of a star-going supernova. There is no reason at all, that any driver should have to wear polarized lenses just to survive their daily commute. But here we are. I've had to constantly adjust my rearview mirror or change my posture just to avoid the glare from headlights beaming behind me. It's dangerous, and it's personal for me because it's brought me perilously close to an accident on no fewer than 4 occasions in the past 2 months, and caused similar close calls among friends and family members, with blinding lights distracting from a curb just ahead that juts out abnormally far, or lights flooding in behind you that ironically obscure the vision directly in front of you, or lights that increase fatigue in the eyes and result in poorer reaction times, making roads more dangerous for everybody. So why are headlights getting brighter? What can you do to adjust for other people's bad behavior? And how can you make sure you're not the one being a road menace? We need to talk about headlights. It's the Roman Report. Let's do it. Let's go. Yeah! Roman Report at the end of the month, and I make what I want when I feel like discussing cars. Earlier this month, a recall that initially went into effect late last year was reported on by Consumer Affairs, noting that select 2024 and 2025 Porsche Macan EVs were flagged for having headlights whose brightness may exceed US safety standards. The National Highway Traffic Safety Administration performed a review of the car's headlight control software and found that some 2,941 vehicles manufactured between March 15, 2024 and November 4, 2024 were affected. To their credit, Porsche is cooperating with the recall, of course, not only removing any inventory that's impacted, but offering to reprogram the headlight control software free of charge. So no big deal, right? Well, yes, big deal. For one, affected drivers actually have to take the time to schedule an appointment at a certified Porsche service center. And not everybody keeps up on recalls, as I've found in my encounters with private sellers over the years. But more importantly is that even if they do get it taken care of, this is still part of a larger ongoing issue. I mean, it's crazy to think that cars sometimes aren't even in motion when all this craziness is happening. You can still get blinded by a car that's just idling in the lot. You know, I can't even tell you how many times I've seen some guy idling in his divorced man day cab, sitting in the parking lot of a Jersey Mike's, blasting a lumen all over the front of the building like he's trying to call Batman. What are you even trying to accomplish here, sir? Or are you just so catastrophically unaware of your surroundings that you don't even notice you're giving pedestrians the Tatooine experience with twin suns mounted to the front of your Cope-mobile? And I mentioned in the intro that these lights can obscure obstacles in the road or distract from road conditions and posted signage, but they can also cause adverse physical reactions like eye strain, migraines, and even seizures. The increased lumen output of LED headlights, with lumens measuring the amount of visible light a source produces, means that for a lot of motorists, nighttime driving has gone from something peaceful or even relaxing to something dangerous and downright terrifying, because motorists everywhere are now being subjected to illegal amounts of light. Of course, on the one hand, illegal is probably the wrong term to use here, since the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration appears to allow LEDs on side markers, auxiliary lights, and even brake lights, according to a 2022 Motor Trend article. On the other hand, illegal isn't exactly the wrong term to use either, since technically, LED headlights are illegal, provided they didn't already come that way from factory. John Donaldson of the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration clarified the legality of LED headlights in his response to a letter by the Soft Lights Foundation last year, writing, quote, "While LED light sources that are part of an integral beam headlamp are permitted, no LED light source is currently permitted to be used in a replaceable bulb headlamp." End quote. So again, LED headlights, totally legal as long as your car already came with them, but you can't replace non-LED headlights with LEDs. And I would also assume this means no putting factory LEDs from one car into an entirely different make and model, as the law seems to only allow the LEDs on the original car on which it was installed from factory. However, the catch for all of this, of course, is that it doesn't seem like anybody has made it a priority to enforce these laws. Although if you've ever gotten a ticket for LED headlights, please leave a comment, I want to know. But like with any regulation, whether it's driving without insurance, or driving on a suspended license, or driving underage when you don't look obviously underage, you kind of have to be pulled over first. So basically, somebody first has to notice, and then they also have to care enough to do something about it. And in this case, it also has to be an officer with enough knowledge to be able to tell that your make and model didn't come with LEDs from factory, assuming it isn't obvious like LEDs on a GTO. And even then, some cops are just as likely to give you a high five as a summons. So I would recommend looking up the laws in your jurisdiction to get a better lay of the land in that regard. But while it's true that LEDs, or light-emitting diodes, have been around since the 1990s, they were more the exception than the rule, as automakers mostly relied on halogen bulbs. Now, from what I could find, the average halogen headlights emit around 900 to 1,000 lumens of light at approximately 55 watts, while LEDs can produce between 3,600 and 4,500 lumens. Granted, HID, or high-intensity discharge headlights, can exceed 5,000 lumens on average. It seems that these are more preferable for fog lights than headlights themselves, since they're not as energy efficient as LEDs, and HIDs run the risk of causing structural issues to the housing and surrounding components when operating at an output of that level of heat and intensity. But then that's also the issue we run into with LEDs in the enthusiast community, because oftentimes those LEDs are being installed on cars that have no business running them. If a car originally had halogen headlights, then the housing may not be able to handle LEDs, damaging the housing and causing the light to be misaligned. This is without even going into how some people will go even bigger than necessary or reasonable, mounting LEDs that emit some ludicrous 5-digit lumen output. And look, I understand that we can't exactly turn away from LEDs right now, as they're gradually becoming the industry standard if they haven't already. They last longer, and they're more energy efficient, and they offer brighter and wider light, in comparison to halogens emitting lumens at a lower output. as they sometimes produce more of a yellow-tinged light, or what I like to call that home-style vanilla ice cream tint. Now, automakers and independent organizations alike have been trying for years to see changes made in the United States, although they seem to be operating at different extremes altogether. While automakers are trying to get matrix headlights and ADB headlights legalized over here, more on those later, nonprofits have attempted to lobby the government directly for some form of regulation. And few organizations are more entrenched on the front lines of LED regulation than the Soft Lights Foundation, an organization that, quote, advocates for the protection of people and the environment from the harms of visible light radiation emitted by products that use light-emitting diodes, end quote. Their website, softlights.org, features regularly updated testimonials detailing the negative effects of LEDs to motorists across the world, with one user detailing the migraines her husband suffers as a result of the glare, while another notes their inability to use their mirrors when tailed by Jeeps, SUVs, trucks, and other cars with headlights that sit above the average eye level for a car. A third user recalled having to pull over and wait for the dark spot in the center of their vision to dissipate after being flashed by an intense headlight burst. And a fourth user even made the argument that LED headlights and streetlights are hurting city ambiance and impacting moth reproductive cycles. Yes, modern technology is running interference on moths being able to get some of that strange. And while it sounds absurd, it has basis in scientific fact, as bright LEDs have been shown to be disruptive to wildlife. For example, studies have shown that extreme light pollution can mess with the flight path of migratory birds, disrupt the circadian rhythm of wildlife, and even impact how plants perceive day length. To say nothing of how light pollution blots out the stars. All for a method of illumination that may not have been vetted quite as rigorously as we all might have expected. As the Soft Light Foundation explains in their overview of the issue, LEDs were more or less rushed into manufacture without any appreciable long-term testing to truly gauge the effects of visible light radiation emitted by LEDs. Quote, high luminance LED products were introduced into society without having been vetted for comfort, health, or safety. The many federal laws that exist to ensure protection of the public were skipped in the rush to convert to this new light source. Government officials have not understood that LED radiation has an entirely different set of physics characteristics as compared to traditional light sources, and that LEDs emit a directed energy light that can be exceedingly intense. Due to the combination of government officials ignoring existing laws and not understanding the physics of LED light sources, there are no regulations to protect the public from harm. End quote. Now, while this high-beam Kamehameha is a global problem, there is a uniquely American lean to this topic because your commute home becoming an anime-level spectral event is the direct result of our reluctance to adopt proper adaptive headlight technology, by which I mean the stuff Europe and China has, such as the ADB, or Adaptive Driving Beam, headlights. A 2023 article by AAA notes that rather than just automatically turning on high beams when it detects certain low visibility conditions, or lowering brightness as other vehicles approach, ADB headlights, quote, alter the beam pattern to reduce glare for oncoming drivers without losing any forward lighting. The result? An increase in roadway illumination of up to 86% compared to standard lights. End quote. A 2024 CNN report on ADB headlights would elaborate on the advantages further, noting that ADBs are essentially capable of shaping the light, rather than just blasting it all over the road, so that the light that is dispersed is more focused, keeping the harmful rays away from oncoming vehicles without compromising visibility for the person driving in those inclement conditions or nighttime roads. So naturally, it would behoove automakers to incorporate ADB headlights on vehicles for the United States market, right? Yet that hasn't been the case, despite the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration providing manufacturers the okay to start using them way the hell back in 2022. The CNN report does note that some vehicles in the US offer the feature, but they simply don't operate in the manner they're supposed to due to software limitations. Now, I know there are some people who've found a way to get into their car's code to unlock that functionality, but I don't know how much of that is reality and how much of it is big leaguing their tech capabilities for the Discord chat. Either way, despite approval for proper adaptive headlights, US regulations are such that it will likely be years before ADB headlights can be redesigned to meet federal standards. CNN cites Michael Larson, a member of the Society of Automotive Engineers Lighting Committee and a technical fellow for exterior lighting at General Motors, who says that the initial hope had been that a simple software change would have allowed them to get this feature to market sooner. However, all the figurative red tape has stalled progress. More specifically, as the article goes on to detail, quote, NHTSA's rules require the ADB headlights to respond extremely swiftly after detecting another vehicle within reach of the lights, much faster than other standards require in the EU and Canada. Also much faster than a human could switch off an ordinary high-beam headlight. They also dictate extreme narrow lines between bright and dark regions. Ultimately, the NHTSA regulations require completely new headlamp designs for the US, Larson said. This means the ADB capabilities engineered into headlights already on Audi and Mercedes cars in the US, for instance, will probably never get switched on. End quote. With that said, there does appear to be some progress being made here in the States, as Tesla's head designer, Franz von Holzhausen, and vehicle engineering vice president, Lars Moravy, appeared on Jay Leno's Garage earlier this month to reveal that we're finally getting adaptive driving beam and matrix headlights on the new Model Y. The idea here with the matrix headlights, at least, is that certain pixels will alter their intensity based on road conditions, such as the presence of other vehicles or certain terrain like bends in the road, so that you can take a curve without having to worry that you're flying blind. Now, I would imagine an over-the-air update would also provide this to other Model Y drivers, since I've read that the code is there for it, but it's just been dummied out in the United States. But even taking this into account, other automakers have similar features in their cars, so I can't even necessarily say it's some huge innovation Tesla is doing when, as the CNN article mentioned, Mercedes and Audi already have a feature more or less like this, and Rivian's doing it too. But then you could argue that Tesla will be among the first to get approval for it here in the United States. And while I'm not the biggest Tesla fan, this is a net positive for society because Tesla drivers probably need this as much as any F-150 Lightning owner I've ever come across. Tesla drivers are sort of this bizarre cross between BMW owners and Nissan Altima drivers, in terms of just treating the road like it's their own personal domain and nobody else exists. However, having said all of this, and having noted how much more of a handle our European brethren seem to have on all of this, the bright headlights are not just an American issue, as the UK government is being petitioned to ban excessively bright headlights. and they've since responded by announcing their intention to commission an independent research team to look into this and offer possible solutions, with a report due this summer. And it could offer a potential guide for how the US can similarly research the harmful effects of these lights. But for what it's worth, I do feel like a lot of people are starting to feel the frustration, particularly during this time of year where it gets dark faster. People are fed up, as evidenced by this utterly banal TikTok I made that got an obscene amount of views by my standards, yet may just be the dumbest thing I've ever gone minor league viral for. And while I wonder how much of the engagement was just people correcting me for misusing the phrase heat death of the universe, every one of those, well, actually, comments was met with 10 more expressing how out of control bright headlights have gotten. And it's nearing the point where it feels like more people can relate to this problem than not. And it doesn't seem to be entirely out of self-interest either, but out of concern for relatives, other loved ones, and even other motorists in general. Because believe it or not, for most people, I believe, empathy is still a thing. I can't stand these blinding headlights, but I'm more frustrated by how it preoccupies my mind with concern for other people in my life, and even strangers too. I'm sick of feeling like I have to worry about my mom or my sister or my brother or my nephew or other motorists on the road just trying to go about their day, but facing potential peril because of some jackwagon who only cares about his own visibility. And I already hear all you salty contrarian rage merchants saying that older drivers shouldn't be on the road if it's that much of a problem. But I would recommend having empathy now in advance of young folks saying the same shit about you in 30 years. I've spent enough time on r/fuck your headlights to know that this isn't a problem that only affects people of a certain age or of certain eye sensitivities. It can strike anyone. Even the most alert and careful of drivers, because the sun could be just going down and the lights could be just coming on, right as a car comes into your line of vision in the opposing lane, and you're not ready for it, and wham! The lights smack your eyes like a strong pimp hand, and there's a spherical, shiny-edged black pit at the center of your vision. And here comes a pothole you didn't see early enough to react in time to avoid. And boy howdy, I'm sure your suspension loved that. So what can we do, other than just rage against the dying of the light? Well, okay, I guess the brightening of the light. Well, there are any number of petitions you can find online that advocate for stronger regulation of headlight intensity, although the fact that some go as far back as 2016 with very little in the way of meaningful progress having been made is cause for concern. In that sense, I'd suggest reaching out to your state representative or official. Just send them an email or make a phone call. Let them know that this is something you care about enough to inconvenience yourself over. Because nobody wants to have to call their congressman or whoever. But then apathy breeds the type of misery we're destined to complain about. So it can be worth doing it just to say you at least tried to make your voice heard. For his part, Soft Light Foundation founder Mark Baker's petition to the FDA to limit headlight intensity last year was received and appears to still be under review. In the meantime, Baker filed suit earlier this month against the California Department of Transportation and the California Highway Patrol for using unlawful flashing LED lights and for failing to respond to the Soft Lights Foundation petition, respectively. So somebody's out here doing something. But what else can you do? Well, a report by CBS Pittsburgh cites Dr. Rob Bittner of the UPMC Eye Center, who states that something you can do right now that can help, even if it won't entirely solve the issue, is simply cleaning your damn windshield. This is because we're trying to avoid light scatter, and a dirty windshield can cause the light to disperse rather than enter cleanly and directly through the windshield. Other recommendations include simple things like blinking more often, looking slightly to the right side of the lane rather than looking directly at oncoming lights, and either getting anti-reflective coated lenses or tinted nighttime driving lenses if you're someone who wears glasses. To my understanding, anti-reflective coated lenses require a prescription, whereas the yellow or amber tinted nighttime driving lenses are over the counter. However, the catch there is that there are some characteristics that can make you more susceptible to light sensitivity, as Dr. Brittner notes that people with lighter eyes have less of a tolerance than those with darker eyes. So I'm not exactly sure that those yellow or amber tinted nighttime driving glasses are the answer, especially since it seems the jury is out on just how helpful they really are. The idea is that they filter out blue light and reduce glare, but the counter to that argument is that any kind of tint will affect visibility, particularly at nighttime, because it limits the amount of light that the eye is capable of receiving. While some might argue it's an extra barrier of protection between headlights and the human eye, others might suggest it's an obstacle. For this same reason, I'm not sure tinted windows are the solution either, particularly since different jurisdictions have different laws on how much of a tint you can even have. And I wonder how much tint you would actually need for it to be helpful in the first place without also endangering your overall visibility, since again, some would say any amount of tint is too much. Of course, all this is only from what I've been able to find on the subject, and I've seen plenty of people who swear by nighttime driving lenses or window tints, so I can really only speak for myself in saying it isn't a choice I would make. But I would encourage anybody watching this to do their own research to find out what solution might suit them best. In terms of more reasonable suggestions, well, I mean, if this is really a problem that doesn't seem to be getting better and your eyes genuinely have trouble adjusting, then I'm just going to hit you with old reliable. Consult a physician. Because getting your eyes checked to see if there are any pre-existing light sensitivities can help you better understand why this might be affecting you so severely, and perhaps you can then get a prescription for specialized lenses. Another suggestion, and it's something I do, and honestly, it's not a very fair solution, I know, but sometimes if I know I'm not making it back before dark, I just take a different, less populated route home, because I'd rather just take back roads than stay on the highway, having my eyes blasted like I'm having back alley LASIK performed. But if that's not really your speed, another thing you can do is adjust your seat a little higher or a little lower. Now, of course, don't overdo it. You should still be able to comfortably see the road, but while you'll still have to see other people's headlights, the right positioning will prevent you from getting the full brunt of their laser light show. Similarly, and obviously, adjusting your rear view and side mirrors can help with this as well, in addition to cleaning them as suggested for your windshield. And I know, none of these are ideal solutions, because they don't really address the root cause of other people's headlights being too bright. It bugs me that I don't have an answer, a better answer, although I trust the comments section will be replete with other solutions, so I would encourage people who have solutions that work for them to share theirs, even if it's just to vouch for something mentioned earlier. With all that having been said, we also need to be vigilant of what our cars are doing. So aside from being mindful of things like high beam usage and not jamming LEDs into halogen housings, here's another thing you can do. Adjust and align your headlights to make sure they're aiming where they're supposed to be aiming. I've linked a AAA guide on how to manually do this in the description, but if I've somehow forgotten to do that, you can just Google the article title as you see it on screen right now. It's a fairly straightforward 6-step process, but I don't want to risk misleading you by delivering that information in a clumsy fashion, which seems kind of inevitable if I ever try to explain technical processes, you know? It's better to just get it direct from the source. You can also ask your mechanic to check the headlight alignment for you at your next inspection. But ultimately, while we can do our best to mitigate the issue, Excessively bright headlights are a problem waiting for a solution. While automakers do seem to want to bring properly adaptive headlight technology stateside, our regulations preclude us adopting it as quickly as we'd probably like to. And even if we were to adopt it tomorrow, it'll be a long time before the cars that have overly bright LEDs from stock are phased out of the pool, if they ever truly are. And while I'm mostly against judging people, I don't know that I'm necessarily against calling out people in your life who do ridiculous things like adding those aftermarket LEDs to a car on which they don't belong. But then that's just putting more pettiness out into the world, and I'm not sure what pettiness ever solved or ever will. So instead, I put the question to you. What can we do to be safer? How can we manage this better? Tell me your bright headlights story in the comments, and let me know how you deal with it. I'd like to thank you for watching, and if you enjoyed the video, consider leaving a like, a comment, sharing the video, or even subscribing. And be sure to tap the bell icon so you're notified for every new video. And if you want to see more videos like this, consider supporting us on Patreon, where these videos release early for patrons alongside other exclusive content. Last but not least, for every new order from our merch site linked in the description, or in the product shelf below the video, I'll be sending out personalized thank you videos. Thank you again for welcoming me into your day. Have an amazing week. No matter when you're watching this.